A father relentlessly hunts for his missing daughter and uncovers a human trafficking ring in his own town. This is the Emmarae Gervasi story. Hi, Amy.
I mean, I'm all in on this. Wow. That's some intro.
It was a powerful opening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How'd you hear about this one?
Oh, my goodness. This one is kind of on my news feed, probably because it's a Long Island story, which, is where I grew up. So I think this one.
Up there.
Yes, you did. Sorry. My bad. But when did you move? How long were you there for?
I was there from like age 2 to 13. So
okay. Yeah.
Formable years.
No, yeah. I thought you were a little earlier for some reason, but yeah, no, this one, I feel like I want to say my mom, Michelle, like everyone was like, have you seen this one? It's sort of not far from where my mom lives now too. Just so you know. So I think, yeah, but I'm not sure this case is going to be one of those that everyone is aware of. And as I began to look into today's story, there were some pretty unique factors about it, like how the events unfolded, the outcome, the players. I think that we're going to have a lot to discuss. And also, I think we'll be diving into some critical conversations about the pressing issue of human trafficking and how it's a problem that's a lot closer than some people might know or might think. I covered my Women&Crime class, but I think we tend to think of trafficking as an international or, it doesn't happen in the U.S. It happens other places. Yep. But that is very untrue. So we will discuss that today. Before we get into these issues, let's meet Emmarae Gervasi. Emmarae is originally from Melville, Long Island, where she lived with her mother, Melissa, father, Frank, and 2 older brothers. So her parents divorced in 2014. Her father remarried and moved to the small Long Island town of Patchogue. Do you know Patchogue?
I do. Yep. I think it was close to where I grew up. It's Suffolk County, right?
Yes. So this is Suffolk County. I'll be getting into that too. So most of Long Island is divvied into counties, just a couple of them. Hold that, and I'll get into that for people who might not know. Emmarae remained with her mother at first, and according to Melissa, she was a happy, straight-A student until she endured an unnamed trauma at the age of 12 that led her to being exploited by people who offered her drugs. I looked into this a little bit. Both of her parents say that there was some trauma. Something happened to her. I don't know what it is, and we don't need to delve that much further into it, just to know that it kind of set her on a different path. And after this, Emmarae became addicted to substances. She ran away from home and she began posting extremely revealing photos of herself on social media.
How old was she at this point, Meghan?
She was like 13.
13, okay.
That's young. She was also posting herself on social media, engaging in some illegal activities. Like one of them was that she was behind the wheel of a car at like 4 a.m. At 13 years old, when she should have clearly been home and not been behind the wheel of a car. She was treated in substance abuse facilities more than once and even briefly detained in juvenile detention for hitting a police officer. I think that she was being arrested and she was responding. I don't think it was like an attack on an officer. But following her release from detention, she went to live with her father, Frank Gervasi, and her stepmother in 2024.
Oh, this is very recent, this case.
Yes. It's on the news too. It's too recent to have like a documentary or something like that, but certainly a lot of news articles about it. And her father, Frank Gervasi, has been very outspoken as well. So at the time of events we're discussing today, Emmarae was 14 years old. And upon moving in with her father, Frank, who now had full custody of her, she was fitted with an ankle monitor. This was after her release from juvenile detention. According to Frank, she was doing better. She was not using substances. He believed she was happier and things were trending in the right direction.
Meghan, do we know why he got full custody?
No, I don't know if this was an agreement. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if her mom and dad just agreed that it was better for her at this point to go stay with him. I'm not sure if it was court ordered. Some of this is quiet. I think it relates to whatever happened to her. But regardless, she was with Frank and his wife, and she was the only child in the home. According to him, she seemed to be doing better. So I think what happened next was pretty shocking. On the evening of December 9th, 2024, Frank called Emmarae to check in on her when he was just a few minutes from home. I think he was getting off from work and coming home. After hanging up with her father, Emmarae shouted to her stepmother that she was just running outside for a minute to get something and she'd be right back. I think her mom was upstairs, or stepmother was upstairs. Dressed in a t-shirt, pants, no shoes, and remember, in December, Emmarae exited the house, but by the time her father pulled in the driveway, she'd vanished. Neither he nor her stepmother knew what happened to her.
Two questions come to mind, which I'm sure you're going to get to both of them, but we're talking 2024, so ring cameras. Yes. Everyone has ring cameras, so I'm hoping we hear something about that. And did she have her cell phone on her?
She did not have her cell phone on her, and we will get to ring cameras. Yes.
Okay.
So where could she have gone? No shoes. December in New York is cold. Like, did she run away or had something worse happened was the real question. Well, Frank contacted the police. He was not the type to sit idly by. So let me just tell you a little bit about him. A heavily tattooed auto detailer with a very big build and a take no prisoners attitude.
A real Long Island guy.
Yes, but even more so, just so you know, Frank, you'll see pictures and he's facially tattooed, like very heavily.
Oh, wow.
But yes. Frank sprang into action, posting a $15,000 reward for any information on Emmarae all over social media, as well as physically searching for her. So he was really active immediately. Her mother, Melissa, was also terrified for her daughter, but while Frank was outspoken and involved in every step of the investigation, Melissa really preferred to let the police take the lead and look for potential avenues, potential leads here. And the police got a lead pretty quickly. After checking the surveillance cameras from the neighborhood, of course, the Ring and others, there was a clear shot of Emmarae getting into a blue Honda right in front of her house. But it was unclear. It was a little bit grainy, so it was unclear if she got into the car of her own volition or was pulled into the car. So, okay, they got this footage, but it takes off. And then they don't have any other footage right at that moment. So where the car went, they weren't sure.
It also seems her not wearing shoes, I think, tips us off to maybe she wasn't planning on getting in the car with someone. Maybe she was just someone was dropping something off or she was giving someone something.
Yeah, or even if she was going to get in the car for a second, like not wearing shoes probably means she wasn't planning on leaving.
And not having your cell phone in 2024, you're not planning on going anywhere.
Right, exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? You asked about the cell phone, and I said, no, she didn't have the cell phone. She did not have a cell phone at that time because they were very concerned about, well, remember I said she had a history of posting things that were a little bit revealing, maybe illegal activities. So her father did not let her have a phone or media accounts, social media accounts at that time.
Okay, so she still didn't have one on her, but yeah, that's more clarification.
But she still didn't have anything on her. It wasn't until the next day that they got another tip. Emmarae was spotted on surveillance again around 2 a.m., knocking on doors at the Bohemia Hotel, which is near Long Island's MacArthur Airport, for reference. So I think this is one of those hotel airport kind of situations. Now, unfortunately, she wasn't at the hotel when the police followed up, and until January 3rd, 26 days after her disappearance, there were no more leads about Emmarae's whereabouts. But on the 3rd, Frank received a phone call that a woman had a tip for him about his daughter. However, he'd received a lot of tips, so he was skeptical at this point. You know, I can't stand these cases. Like, when I heard about some of the callers, tips are fine. So people were calling in with what they thought are sightings, but he was getting false callers, like taunting him, people who were trying to extort him for that money. It's so infuriating. And I can't imagine being a parent searching for your child and getting this kind of thing. It's so disturbing to me.
Do you recall the Amy Lynn Bradley case? The girl who went missing on the cruise ship that I covered a while back. Do you remember there were people that said that they knew where Amy was? They gave thousands upon thousands of dollars. And again, it's more about the false hope than the money. Just a quick question, though. Yeah, you said people were calling him with tips. So the police had a tip line and he also had a personal tip line. Is that what was going on?
I guess he put his phone number on that because he was getting direct tips. Yeah.
Okay.
He was, like I said, he was really proactive. Like he wasn't messing around. He posted information and he was the one who posted the reward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he was, he wasn't sure about this caller, but as the caller seemed able to describe his daughter in more detail, Frank became convinced that the caller might have had real information about Emmarae's whereabouts. So he got in his car and followed the caller's directions to a marina in Islip, New York, which is about 13 miles from his home. Islip,
and he didn't tell the
obviously.
police. He just did this on his own?
So on the way, he contacted the police, which is really interesting because he somehow had to get the tipster off the phone. Like, this tipster called. It was a woman. She said, I'm with your daughter. I know where she is. And somehow he made an excuse, like, I have to make a phone call. I don't know if he said who he was calling, but he hung up. He called the police. And then he called the tipster back and said that he was shocked when she answered. And she also stayed on the line with him until he arrived at the Whitecap Marina. And I believe the distance from his house, as I said, 13 miles, was about 25 minutes. To his further surprise, the caller was waiting in the marina outside a boat for him when he arrived.
Older woman, younger woman?
Well, it's funny. When you say older or younger, I now have a different description, but she was in her 50s, so we'll just say...
Younger.
Younger. According to this woman, though, Emmarae was on this boat, and she said Emmarae was alive and that she did not know if her captor was on the boat with her. So this boat with a closed door, and Frank has no idea what's behind the doors.
And the police are on their way at this point?
They're on their way.
Okay.
But Frank wasn't going to wait for his daughter because he didn't know, or he wasn't going to wait for the police. He didn't know what was going on. He busted down the door with no fear of the danger on the other side.
I think any of us would have done that.
I think so too. But
I'm not saying it's the smart thing to do, but I think if you're told that your child might be behind that door, you don't care what else might be there.
I totally agree. I know that I would bust down the door as well. And to his intense relief, his daughter was there on the other side of the door and very much alive.
What? I was not expecting that.
I know.
I hope she got the reward money, the woman who called him. That's
hold that thought.
Okay.
When Frank saw his daughter, he grabbed her in a tight hug, calling this discovery a gift from God, and she was relieved to see him.
Was she in good shape?
I'll describe her in a second. Just so you know, people I saw in the media were calling this like a Liam Neeson recovery. Remember Taken? He goes to search for his daughter.
Of course.
Yeah, so they're calling this the Taken moment. Frank describes that after hugging Emmarae, he cleared the boat, which he just wanted to make sure there was no one else on it. So like with her behind him, he went through and made sure there was no one on it, and basically sat down with his daughter and waited for the police.
And where did the woman go?
The woman was outside. She never got on the boat with him. I don't believe she fled immediately, but I will discuss a little bit. Now, the police were there, he said, about 5 minutes later, so it wasn't long. They got there quickly. And though Emmarae appeared to be in okay physical shape, of course they were going to take her to the hospital. Frank said that she was clearly dehydrated. She did appear to be on some substances. So she had been given drugs. And of course, they were also looking to see if she was sexually assaulted because that was the suspicion at the time. Mm-hmm. But I will say at the time he found her, her physical condition did not appear to be critical or life-threatening.
Was she wearing the same clothes that she went missing in?
I don't know. I don't know actually what clothing she was wearing, but I know she was clothed. So how did this all happen and what actually happened? As Emmarae was being treated, the police were beginning to build a picture. So apparently Emmarae had been communicating online with a 35-year-old man named Alton Harrell for about a year. And it was his blue Honda that she had gotten into that day when she disappeared. He subsequently sex trafficked Emmarae over the next 25 days, moving her between various locations, including a mobile home, a motel. Remember, there was a hotel that she was at on the footage just the next day, a detached garbage container, like various other places before hiding her on this yacht owned by a man named Francis Bouquet. 64 years old and unmarried, Bouquet had apparently been planning to take Emmarae out of the state to the Carolinas at some point. So it seems like he was going to traffic her down to the Carolinas. I don't know which one.
So the man that picked her up in the Honda, would you say his name was Anton?
Alton.
Alton, sorry. Alton, was he working for this other guy?
This is unclear at this time. It's a good question, but the network here, I don't know if they were working for each other or trading with each other. Like, I feel like this is almost one of those criminal associates who know each other, like know where to get drugs, know where to get certain things, but still a little bit unclear. As you mentioned, very recent this case is. And I will tell you, at least 13 individuals were involved in her captivity, including the two that I mentioned and others, until her father rescued her from that boat in the Whitecap Marina.
No other victims, though?
No other victims associated with this, with Emmarae. There were no other victims found. I imagine there's going to be other victims found with other criminal activities. But two of the people involved here, which I think is interesting to point out, were women. And remember the woman who called the tipster? Well, it appears that she was also a perpetrator in this scheme.
Which is why she did not get the reward money. Now I understand why you ignored that question.
Right.
So she went from bad guy to good guy in a sense.
Yeah. Yes. We don't know. So Frank was asked, because he's done some interviews, one with Dr. Phil, and he was asked, like, why do you think she tipped you off? And I think some people think it was for the reward money. He actually thought she had like a attack of conscience. So she was also, it seemed that a lot of these people were very drug addicted. And she, I believe she was heavily addicted to crack. And I believe that her role was also promising Emmarae certain things like clothing and makeup and stuff like this if she would have sex with a man who would then provide this woman with crack cocaine. Okay. So I don't know if she felt guilty. I will tell you that she was a grandmother. So maybe there was an attack of the conscience. I don't know. But again, she was a tipster. So 13 of these people, it happened slowly too. They weren't all arrested. It was like this network unfolded. But 13 people were arrested and charged with crimes including kidnapping, sexual assault, child endangerment, and sex trafficking. There's a full list of names in many of the sources I'm going to cite later. I'm not going to list out the names. You can easily access them and look at everyone and pictures as well.
Meghan, how many pleas do you think were made in this process of gathering up these people?
Yeah. I think the reason why they have 13 people is because one turns on the other, but that information wasn't available at the time that I was researching. But yes, I think there's going to be many. And interestingly, I saw the defense of at least one defendant, according to his attorney, is that Emmarae was never actually held in captivity. Rather, she was there of her own volition. So we know that this claim does not negate sexual assault charges, but I think perhaps what they're looking for is to mitigate the punishment and also negate perhaps kidnapping charges, because kidnapping is quite serious. So I think maybe they're trying like, hey, this is a bad guy, did a bad thing, but it's not as bad as you think. I would think that's probably just a strategy, as you said, for the pleas. The case is still unfolding and the charges are still pending, but sex trafficking is certainly at the heart of the story. So let's unpack this completely enormous issue. Sex trafficking is a form of human trafficking. Human trafficking is defined, there are different definitions. The one that I've used for my classes is forced labor of individuals for purposes of prostitution, domestic servitude, and other forms of involuntary servitude. And the methods are through coercion, force, or fraud. So that's very interesting. It's not necessarily that all of these are forceful, but there is coercion, which I'll discuss. I don't know, these numbers, they grow exponentially, Amy, so quickly. Yeah, from the time I started teaching this topic in Women in Crime, the numbers have quadrupled in terms of the victims.
And that's an underreport, because we know that most victims are not reporting, especially in these types of crimes.
It's absolutely an underreport, but according to the International Labor Organization, approximately 40 million people are trafficked per year globally. And it is the fastest growing criminal enterprise. They estimate approximately $236 billion per year in revenue.
Wow. Any sense what it looks like in just the United States? Because you were saying that's one of those like things we don't realize that's happening at home.
It is. So I'm going to talk specifically. I'm starting with like the general, and I'm going to get down to Long Island and also where we're at, where Emmarae was. So I just want to also point out that there's usually two main categories of trafficking. And I mentioned the forced labor. So this can vary from work in sweatshops to farms, fields, or forced domestic servitude, such as housekeeping, child caretakers. And in some country, children are trafficked to fight as child soldiers. As you probably know, we had a colleague, if you recall, who retired, but an anthropologist who did a course on like child soldiers. So then second is the commercial sex industry. And this is forced sex work. But there's also forced marriage. There's various different categories, and I think they're expanding. What are the primary causes of trafficking? Well, first of all, the demand is always present for sex services and cheap labor. So that's unfortunate. In places also where there's extreme poverty, coupled with severe gender inequalities, political instability, either lack of law enforcement or corrupt law enforcement, and lower levels of education, it's like a hub for people to be targeted by traffickers who often will promise families that their children will see better lives. We can get them better conditions with better families, better education. So this is kind of like more of the global conditions, but you had asked about United States. So let's talk about the US. Certainly there are some similar conditions, but luring of victims is a little bit different. The US traffickers target vulnerable victims, and that's always a key here too, vulnerability, who are suffering from an economic hardship. So usually there is that factor, but there's also usually psychological or emotional vulnerability due to neglect, abuse, and substance use. So those who are suffering with traumas, coupled with addiction and a lack of what we call a social safety net. So community, family, and others to help. These are like the most vulnerable people. And a lot of them, at least half, are children. But most trafficking isn't carried out by physical force either, which I think you probably know. It's psychological coercion in which traffickers use false promises of employment or romance to lure victims in. That is become the dominant method for traffickers. So how does this apply to Long Island, New York specifically? Did you, and just out of curiosity, did you know about trafficking? Because Suffolk County has become somewhat of a hub. And this is where Emmarae was trafficked. So that's what I'm going to focus on.
I did not. I guess I'm not surprised if you think about the location, to New York City, to the international airports. But no, I did not.
Yeah. So Suffolk County has a population of about 1.5 million people. It's the fourth largest county in all of New York State, and it has a growing human trafficking issue that has been on the rise for the last 10 years.
Do we know why?
I'm going to get to that, yeah. But just for context, according to the Department of Justice, it's one of the 20 jurisdictions impacted by human trafficking the most across the United States. So we're talking about a significant problem here. More than 120 trafficking survivors, 85 in Suffolk and 35 in Nassau County, were rescued between 2009 and 2019, according to the New York Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. Of those people, 73 had been trafficked for sex, while 31 were labor trafficking victims, and 16 were victims of both. So it's not mutually exclusive either. People are being used in all regards. Long Island is divided into 4 counties. So Suffolk and Nassau County are really you already know this, the suburban kind of eastern ends, where Brooklyn and Queens are more of the urban city side.
I did not know that Brooklyn and Queens is considered Long Island.
So, yes, they are considered boroughs of like the city, but they are literally located on Long Island. But
no one would ever say they live in Long Island if they're from Brooklyn or Queens, right?
No.
Like that would never happen.
You would never say that. No.
Okay, that is interesting. I just learned something new.
Well, you're learning a lot of new stuff, I hope. Okay, so what is Suffolk County doing to alleviate this? Well, to start, just so you know, Suffolk County launched the Human Trafficking Investigations Unit in March of 2018. Since its inception, there have been over 75 arrests, 50 indictments, and over 320 counts or separate charges related to trafficking. There have also been, just so you know, 165 convictions. Why then, you might ask, or you did ask, is this problem so pervasive in Suffolk County, which we can talk about, but you have a question before that, right?
Sorry, you can always tell when I'm like, I'm like dying to get a question out. That's
Yeah,
why I
no.
love that we could see each other, because
I
I
know.
could give you my cues. But are the offenders typically just your Long Island resident, or are these people coming in from other areas?
Yeah, it seems like it does seem like a lot of them are residents, but
Really?
like they're trafficking to people who are coming in.
So they're working with, yeah, of course they're definitely working with other people, but
And I would like to point out, while I didn't see an exact number, there is a gang problem. So the traffickers are, a number of them are also gang members as well, who are trafficking people as part of their drug trade. So again, why Suffolk County? Well, there's a couple reasons. One county executive pointed out that they have a younger population than many other New York counties there, and it's a densely populated area, which means more targets, unfortunately. As you pointed out, though, Amy, very correctly, it's also very close proximity to New York City and airports. A lot of airports.
international
JFK.
airports.
Yep, JFK International is huge.
LaGuardia, Newark. Yeah.
And then you combine
Yeah.
this proximity, dense population, a lot of young people, with the opioid crisis, with so many young people becoming addicted, and traffickers are using drugs to groom their victims. Also, as you pointed out before, because you're so smart, Suffolk County is also on eastern Long Island, which has a high tourist rate in the summer months due to many beach towns, including the Hamptons. So people with money are coming in and out, which increases the demand.
Yeah.
So all of these
Perfect
reasons, and I'm
storm.
sure others, it's a perfect storm, make it susceptible to trafficking. And though it's wonderful that law enforcement is working to prosecute offenders, they're also working on initiatives to help victims, just so you know. When it came on the radar of like law enforcement and district attorney's offices, I think that there was more of a focus on prosecuting, but they still weren't able to treat victims like victims. They were still treating them like sex workers. So on Suffolk County.
Centoya's case, right? Remember
Yes.
Centoya's case is
Absolutely.
a good example of that.
I agree. In Suffolk County, the sheriff's anti-trafficking initiative helps to identify the victims and connect them with proper services that they need for recovery. So that's important. Also, the Safe Harbor program focuses on protecting and assisting sexually exploited children, offering them medical and mental health assessments, case management, and community education. And while Emmarae had access to all these excellent organizations, she faced an unfortunately serious roadblock in her recovery. So, bringing this back to Emmarae, while she was being treated at the Sagamore Children's Psychiatric Center, she was reportedly molested by state worker Deshawn McLean on multiple occasions.
You know, I just did a Patreon lecture on the psychology of victims and victimology. And the chronic victimization, it's so important to recognize that when people are vulnerable, they're constantly targeted. And they're the ones that we need to look out for and protect the most, especially a child. She's just constantly being victimized by those around her, even the people that are supposed to be put in place to help her. It's so
Isn't that
unfortunate.
so disappointing?
Mm-hmm.
It's just so disappointing. Like I read this and I went, no, no, no. So, although not completely clear on the exact allegations, he was arrested for groping Emmarae and watching her engage in sex acts during an almost 3-week period. I don't know, again, the extent to this. However, I'll tell you, her father, Frank Gervasi, intends to sue the hospital. And according to his filings, the hospital admitted that an employee got, quote, handsy with Emmarae, but...
No.
Yes. But, quote, assured him that the abuse was being addressed and that the individual would not pose any further risk to his daughter.
Okay, using the word handsy is such a euphemism, and it's absolutely disgusting that they would use that in official capacity.
It's infuriating.
I mean, obviously, everything about that's infuriating, that they were going to handle it internally, all of that. They were just downplaying it, but handsy?
Yeah, I was really, really disappointed to see that, the downplay of that. God, it reminds me of, do you remember the term wilding in New York City?
With the Central Park 5. Yeah, remember?
And not applied to them because they were
I'm saying
innocent.
around that time it was
wilding was
popular.
downplayed. It was like boys just being boys. It was like sexual assaults, you know? I mean, so I did not appreciate the downplay. I will say that criminal charges against her criminal charges against this employee are still pending at this time because this is a recent case. And at this point, Frank Gervasi has filed a notice of intent. So his intent already filed with the courts to sue the hospital, but that is still in the early infancy stages in the civil courts as well. As we get to the end of this story, I mean, that part I didn't see coming, this double victimization. But I think the important question here, we talked about the trafficking, how it happens, why it happened. Now let's talk about, did the system get it right? And for me, this question is super interesting when it comes to Emmarae because it's multifaceted. This is definitely not just one answer. Yes, the perpetrators have been caught. I mean, I think there could be more, who knows? And they'll definitely be sentenced at some point, I believe. As you said, there'll probably be plea deals. I imagine their punishments will be appropriate, I hope. But so many questions about Emmarae. Was she really recovering? Did the system fail her? She was given an ankle monitor and was reportedly doing better, but then she was lured into trafficking by the promise of drugs. And let me say that this was an app on social media, though she didn't have her own phone. So I think she was sneaking her stepmother's iPad or another device. So this is also a caution. And then she's placed in a safe space of a psychiatric facility and she's assaulted again. I mean, what's the system like?
This is similar to other cases we cover where it's a systemic issue, just failing people at every turn. Yes, as you said, the system get it right when we're looking at that one case. Perpetrators apprehended, but I think there's some other issues. What kind of services, if any, was she getting at school? Was her family getting any services to help? She was clearly struggling as she was entering into adolescence or her young teenage years. And what kind of support did she have, if any?
Yeah.
It's hard. It sounds like her family was doing whatever they could, but who knows what resources they need that they didn't have? I don't know.
Right. Like they were trying, but also, kids sneak things. Like she was, on social media. And like, I don't think her dad did know that at certain points. There's warning signs in her behavior, but authorities, educators, caregivers, they're all unable to protect her from falling into the hands of traffickers who are also extremely crafty. I think the reason I bring this up is because when we first started doing the podcast, or as it evolved, we always talked about the system as like the criminal justice system. But now I think our conversations have expanded to the other systems in place, family, educational system, social welfare, all these other different systemic. Well, I will say, on a plus side, I think Frank Gervasi's relentless determination led to Emmarae's rescue, and her ordeal exposes the deep-seated issues of online predators, drug addiction, human trafficking, and I think that her survival and recovery offer hope on a plus side. I also think that her case has sparked conversations about improving safeguards for vulnerable youth to help children. And I know that her case was instrumental in inspiring some of these organizations and efforts on Long Island and specifically Suffolk County to combat human trafficking.
And I would not be surprised if there are other survivors, other victims that come to light through this investigation. So I think Frank has saved many lives, not just his daughters.
I think so too.
A great case, Meghan.
Yeah.
And a happy ending. It's nice sometimes to have cases that have, of course, there's things in this case that are still depressing, as everything we cover has a dark side. But it's nice that she was found. She's hopefully going to make a full recovery as best as she can and move on to have, a productive, happy life.
Yeah, we really hope so. I really, really hope so. And, she's got family support. So, yeah, it was nice to see that she was reunited with her family at the end. Okay, before we go today, we'd like to take an opportunity to answer a question from our audience. And this question came via email. I hear you both talk about attempted crimes such as rape or murder, but they are punished more minor because these crimes aren't finalized. So is it fair to punish crimes like attempts more leniently? And Amy, I know that you cover this in your classes. So do you want to maybe take this one?
Yes, I'm so excited because this is one of my favorite topics. When I talk about mens rea and actus reus, I always talk about incomplete crimes, also known as attempt. So when I teach my students, in order to be held accountable for a crime, there's typically two elements, right? You have the mens rea, which is the intent, and then you have the actus reus, which is the act. Now, of course, there are many crimes where if you just have one and not the other, you can still be charged. There's always going to be exceptions, right? So, for example, in the crime of attempt, you had the mens rea, but you didn't have the actus reus in the sense that there was no completion. So the question becomes, should we be punishing offenders based on their intent, not necessarily on the action? And while that might make sense when we think about just morality and culpability, in the sense that if I want to kill you and I shoot you in the head, but because of medical technology, you survive, does that change the fact that I wanted you dead? No, right? So why wouldn't I be punished the same? It doesn't make sense as much in that example. But the way I explain it to students is, if we treated the attempted rapist the same as the rapist, what would the incentive be for the people not to continue on with their crime? In other words, by having these different levels, it's almost serving as a deterrent in some ways, that although we know that people that are charged with attempted rape, it's not that they stop because they have some sort of come to in morality. It's usually because somebody saw what they were doing and they were able to break up the situation. But I think the way our legal theory operates, I think part of the reason is that it gives this incentive for there not to be completion. And plus, if we look at the purposes of punishment, if you have a victim who is deceased versus a victim who is still alive, there's different, if we look at it through the lens of like restoration, there's different justice if somebody is deceased versus not deceased. So
also
I think
level of harm too, right? Level of harm.
That's what I kind of mean when I say like justice, right? So the harm, if someone's deceased, then it's like you need to be paying for that, so to speak.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard probably 10 other explanations, but those are the ones that are kind of top of mind for me. Yeah. Do I think that attempt should be treated the same? Sometimes, right? Because I give my students the example, if you have somebody standing in front of you and two people go to shoot that person and one person's bullet, by dumb luck, is the bullet that kills the person, they could get the death penalty. When the other person, their bullet missed the main artery and they might get out in 10 years. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
Okay, I could go. I'm sorry. I'll stop. But do you have anything else to add? I just spoke for a while.
This is your I do teach it, but I don't think I teach it as well as you do. So thank you for that. And thank you for the question. Great question. And we appreciate it. Just so you know, if you're a patron, your question is guaranteed to be read on air. And of course, we can always discuss questions at our meetups. So, consider joining us on Patreon if you're interested in some of our fun events. Okay, well, thanks again, everyone, for listening. And we'll catch you next time on Women in Crime. Women in Crime is written and hosted by Meghan Sachs and Amy Shlosberg. Our producer is James Varga. Script editing is by Abigail Belcastro. Audio editing is by Siler Burr and Jose Alfonso. And music is by Desert Media. If you enjoy the show, please remember to follow and leave a review. You can also support the show through Patreon, where you can get access to additional ad-free content such as exclusive full-length episodes, lectures, a book club, and virtual happy hours with Meghan and Amy. For more information, visit patreon.com/womenandcrime. Sources for today's episode include the New York Post, People.com, AOL.com, the Long Island Press, an interview of Frank Gervasi with Dr. Phil, and the Suffolk County News.